Biological Sciences in Bangalore and the Nature Conservation Foundation in Mysore. And the first thing I'd like us all to do is congratulate these young people here on an excellent show. We will do this as a rather informal discussion, talking a little bit about what they have written about in their essays, but also trying to go a little beyond that. So let me start by introducing them. We've got Mayank Goyal here from IIM, Indian Institute of Management, Indore. And he wrote an essay on water and sustainability, water sustainability, and some of the issues surrounding water in this country, and some thoughts on how we can address those issues. Next we have N. Krishnadas from the Indian Institute of Management in Kozhikode, who with a team, the rest of whom are not here, but with a team has written an essay, an article on green computing, on how one can make various enterprises that surround computing and IT, how we can make them more sustainable and more green. And of course, we'll talk about these as we go along. And then we have a team from the Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur. That's Angam Parashar and his colleague Manan Shah. And they have written about renewable energy and some opportunities there. And also in particular about distributed production and consumption of energy. That is, getting, rather than the system where you generate energy in a center and distribute it over a grid, you generate energy in the places where they're consumed, where it's consumed. And we'll have a discussion with them about it. And finally, from the Indian Institute of Management in Bangalore, we've got Pranay Das and Sandeep Kumar Singh. And they have written a very nice essay on waste and handling waste, and how one person's waste is an opportunity for another. And so can we get people who don't want something together with people who want exactly what they have. And so they've suggested setting up a waste exchange portal, an online portal for waste exchange. So thanks to all of you for staying awake after lunch. And of course, congratulations again to these winners here. We don't have a team from the Indian School of Business in Hyderabad today. So maybe we can start from the end, from my side, that is. Pranay, I can start with you. You've written about this, both of you have written about this waste exchange portal. What made you focus on this particular issue as opposed to any other? How did you start?
Yeah, it was like this. There's a lot of focus on the recycling part of it. A lot of the people are talking that a lot of waste is being generated almost in every sector, being domestic, being industrial. And on the other side, you would see Bangalore is a hub of waste plastic recycling. So if you see, these are two separate silos. One is recycling part, and there is the concern about the waste being generated. But if you look at the value chain of any product, it has value chain from manufacturing to retailer to ultimate consumer. There is no value chain in these waste cycle. People are concerned with silos. Okay, there is a lot of waste, should be recycling. There is no streamlined way to transfer this waste from the generated area to the consumer area. And if you go and look, prior to us, we found very little study being conducted on this waste value chain, and we found surprisingly, just like in any manufacturing, marketing, retailing segment, we have 3 or 4 levels of intermediaries playing, thriving, giving a lot of livelihood. But the processes are very inefficient. So instead of worrying about the silos, if we can streamline this flow of waste from the source to the destination where it can be made into some useful purpose, it can solve a lot of problem.
Okay, so maybe Sandeep, you can just to follow up with that. So once you have this idea that you need to streamline this process, what's the place to begin? Where did you say, okay, we need to do something about it, we need to find out how to streamline this? What is your starting point?
Okay, so just to quote, like from the previous session, we had a very wise thought that moral incentives are no longer working. So being students from business school, we thought, let's give it a business flavor. So we started doing some market studies, market research on whether such an entity, a waste exchange, can exist in reality between, say, a producer and a consumer of waste. So we started doing some market research to get some numbers of what is the volume of waste being generated. We started with the city of Bangalore. So typically within the dry waste category, what is the volume being generated, what are the prices, what are the margins for the sellers and the resellers. Thereby, we developed a business model wherein we predicted what amount of revenue can be generated for the next 3 years, what categories we can operate in. So that's the overall idea, like how the entire model works. What are the marketing things we should do? What are the financial things we should do? So it's more towards that angle.
Okay, and for either of you, what kinds of products, or what kinds of waste products do you think such a model would work best for, and what might it not work for?
Okay, so let me answer this. There are actually two parts of the business. One is the industrial side, one is the domestic side. So if we consider the domestic side of the waste, let's say a housing society or any household will be producing generally two kinds of waste, the dry waste, which is, let's say, plastic, metals, all those things, and one is the organic waste. So currently we are planning to deal with the dry waste kind of things. So households are producing lots of plastic and metals, paper, all those things. So we are planning to establish an exchange whereby you can auction all those things through our portal. Industrial waste is another category. So like acids, alkalis, lots of fly ash, all those things are generated by industries which are again reused by certain other industries. So for example, like iron and steel plants would be generating a lot of slag. So that slag is actually used by cement industries as their raw material. So thereby our exchange comes in between, wherein one iron and steel plant would be selling it through our portal to the cement industry. So that's the two parts of the story.
Just to add to that, I worked in a steel plant for 4 years before. So for large steel plant, there's a lot of raw materials generated. And when these are big companies, they have established system for waste disposal. But when it comes to smaller players, being it cement, being petrochemicals, being any be it simple bag manufacturer, they don't have a systematic way of waste disposal. They just stave it off. They just like get rid of it. So if you give a provision to these players where they can channelize their waste to some more productive use, they can also generate revenue out of that waste.
Right. Okay. Okay, thanks to you. We'll come back to you, of course. But just to move on to IIT Kharagpur. So Angam and Manan here, who have written about renewable energy and distributed energy production. And I was sort of wondering, what is the major, in your mind, Angam, maybe you can answer that, what is the major reason, or in what particular circumstances does it make sense to move away from centralized production of energy and then distribution to this distributed production and consumption?
Well, right now, as a fact to be noted, it's India's grid connectivity is just 65%. And India is the country which is, you can say, the highest transmission and distribution losses occur in India. It's like 27%. So that's a huge amount of loss. So what happens is when the energy production is centralized, of course, the primary thing is T&D losses. So you incur a lot of losses that way. And another factor is cogeneration. So of course, whenever you produce any electricity or energy, a very natural byproduct of it is heat. So when a power plant is connected to grid, its location is usually outside an urbanized area. So you cannot use that heat. So making a decentralized power production not only increases your efficiency, but also gives you an extra advantage over centralized power production. So such, and of course, other opportunities also include like a decentralized power production facility in rural areas will engender employment for them and also result in better agriculture facilities. So these benefits are very natural with decentralized power production, which is not there with centralized, in case of centralized power production.
But presumably there's some costs as well to decentralized production.
Yeah, there are costs to that, but now, as you can see, like there are two kinds of decentralized production possible. One is based on non-renewable energy sources, and one is based on renewable energy sources. So initial investment may be a little high, but then payback and returns are quite good.
I see. Okay.
Can I ask you a question here?
Yeah, of course.
When you say distribution losses of 24%, 25%, what is the breakup of that?
Mostly, of course, as you know, it is connected to the grid. So energy is transferred from the place where it is generated to the consumer.
Yeah, see, there are two parts to it as much as I know. One is technical loss, which is due to joule
that,
loss.
yeah.
Another is the theft loss.
Yeah.
India, the main problem is the theft loss, which contributes close to 20% of the problem.
Yeah.
So like 4 to 5% of the problem is actual transmission loss.
No, transmission is 20% as well in case of centralized generation, and the rest is theft. So of course, setting up decentralized will also ensure, I mean, you can set up a whole different model in case of decentralized power production facility. And in that model, a theft can be dealt in a different way. Right now, as the power production will be done for the local people, so obviously, theft will be little less.
Okay. I was just wondering, so 27, what are the transmission losses, not in India, but what's the sort of best you can get? What's the lowest?
In Europe and US, normally the standard is 10 to 15%.
10 to 15.
Germany has achieved one of the best standards. So they are, depending on the time, their grid losses is somewhere between 7 to 10%. Of course, they don't have to deal with problem of power theft. So as he correctly mentioned, power theft is somewhere close to 15 to 20%, and another 15 to 20% is inadequate infrastructure for transmission. So that amounts to pretty high transmission and distribution losses for Indian grid.
Okay. And then the related topic that in your essay was about renewable energy. What is the reason you club these two things together? Why distributed production and renewable energy?
Well, we started reading, we were working on energy audit for IIT Kharagpur. And we started reading about a lot of different public policies and kind of innovations that are coming out in energy sector. And we started observing that we are we are adding the power generation, our capacity of power generation at a very rapid pace, but still it's not giving us the desired result of taking electricity to the poorest and the most remotest village of India. So, and some of the innovative startups like Husk Power Systems based out of Bihar, maybe Dr. Hande's Celco, these are the startups that they focused on a very small problem. They focused on a local area. They used local resources and created local solutions. So that made us think that probably this is a better way to go about solving this problem. And we subsequently also worked with National Innovation Foundation based out of Ahmedabad. And we worked on designing and developing a very low-cost windmills for salt farmers in the Kutch region. The project got very successful, and that basically triggered this particular thought that maybe this is a better way to solve this problem.
I see. And what do you think, there are many kinds of renewable, sources of renewable energy, and there's a lot of debate among them. Given the benefits and the costs of all the different ones, which do you think will turn out to be, it's a good prediction question, in the next 10 years, 20 years, which one or two might be the ones that actually take things forward?
Well, if you think about it, solar is the first thing that comes to my mind, because solar is available globally. India is the best country for solar radiation in the world. Besides that, the second is probably bioenergy. Because of our agricultural practices, we have a lot of potential to develop innovative bioenergy solutions. And people are working on that, so let's hope bioenergy will probably bring solution to this.
So are you thinking about energy being generated from agricultural waste, or actual land under production being producing?
Mainly agriculture waste, because there is anyway a lot of debate and a lot of controversy going on using the cultivating land for the biofuels. So I don't think that's a very sustainable thing to do, to replace food with biofuels. But yeah, so waste and basically waste and agriculture waste.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Okay. Thank you to two of you. We move on to N. Krishnadas from IIM Kozhikode, and you have this very interesting project on green computing, and as interested to learn in your essay that your institution has more than 1,000 computers. I presume these are institution computers, and there are of course lots of personally owned machines as well. So, and you focused on, well, you've described several different initiatives, one of which is just reducing the energy consumption by computers when they're not properly on idle and so on. So what's the one measure that can most drastically reduce energy consumption in that situation?
Probably to answer that question, I need to provide a background on what that particular concept of grid computing was, because the audience is quite diverse. Yeah. So I would like to just throw light on first what green IT is. So putting up in simple terms, it's basically the environmentally sound information technology. So it involves a lot of things like data centers, the cooling which is required for the servers, the power, energy consumption, etc. So there are a lot of things involved in green IT. So I am a PhD student, and when I was doing my coursework, I was reading a lot on what these green technologies are all about and reading the advantages of it, the implementation parts. But one thing surprising which I found was that though these technologies go on coming up, the implementation levels of these green technologies are relatively very low, especially in India. So we just wanted to explore the reasons why it is. So my guide, Professor Radhakrishnan Pillai, he suggested me that just for a start, why don't you go and implement a particular technology to see what are the issues in it. So this technology is what I'm talking about, is the grid computing, where you can utilize the system resources, the computers which are switched on 24 hours, and you can do something constructive. For example, you can host a particular website. Instead of using the servers, you can use these systems which are switched on 24 hours. So for that, we conducted a study in which we wanted to monitor the computer usage of the students in the institute. Because I have a couple of my friends who sleep with the laptop on their bed, and they check their emails like 10 times during the sleep hours. So the laptop is on 24 hours, and same is the case with the computer center. It's never shut down, and it's either logged or logged off. So all these systems, they have incredible amount of resources. Each system has around 500 GB in the computer center, and not even 1 GB is utilized. Each of these systems have so many computing resources, and it's just running idle. So we wanted to work out on a possibility to explore this technology by which we can utilize these system resources. And the study which we conducted, we found that the efficiency was just 20%. And this was in the computer center. Leaving, as you said, we have personal computers also in the institute. Not talking about that, in the computer center itself, the efficiency was just 20%. So 80% of it is going waste. And as we had a discussion in panel discussion today morning, so we need to transfer this. You know, there is abundance at one place, there's scarcity at other place. So we have to transfer the resources where there is more to the place where there is less. So here we have a good amount of computing resources, so why don't we use it? So that's the technology which was used for our project, and we did work on some of the finer aspects of it, and it further led to my research in this.
So what are some of the, like the one main thing that you would do to share these resources more equitably or to reduce energy consumption and so on?
We had proposed a comprehensive strategy for this, where the institute can adopt multiple things which they have already done. I'm proud to say that my institute now has technologies by which they can utilize some of the system resources. They have converted, we had printers which used to print on single side before, but now they have converted it all to duplex printers. We have some smart clients which utilize less energy. So we had a comprehensive list of strategies, and one thing which I'm looking forward to is developing a cloud out of all the system resources. So we have a common server, we have a common space for all the students, that's just 1 GB. Okay, and if there are 600 students in the institute and just 2 systems are on, we could use those 600 GB to add 1 GB extra for each particular student. So my future project, I mean my future thinking about this green IT is developing a cloud out of all the computing resources in the institute and then providing it to people who actually need it. So transferring of the computing resources. So this is one thing which I look forward to.
Great.
They were having very less supply of water. So in the bank, they were, instead of money, they were putting water there. And somebody actually stole that water. So they went on a treasure hunt for search of that water, and they finally find it. So because movies, good endings. But in real world, say 50 years down the line, our future generations, because the supply of water is limited, and when they will go on such treasure hunt to find the water, some of them won't be able to find it, and some of them who are able to find it will find only contamination. So it's right now up to us to actually look on various ways. Say whenever we're going for a shower or when we are washing our car, to look to sustainable ways to reduce the supply, the usage of water, so that our future generations can actually have the privilege of having the most precious resource on earth to actually have it in 50 years down the line. So this was the basic idea.
And in your essay, you've explored different dimensions of water usage and sustainability. Would you pick any one of those as standing out from the others as being really a crisis issue for us in the next 10 years, 20 years?
Right. I've explored 9 to 10 issues in my paper. Most of them are critical, but like two of them I can actually explain. One is that we should understand right now that the supply of water which we are having is finite, and the demand is increasing each year. So in next 20 or 30 years, there is a prediction that by 2030, 50% of the demand won't be able to met by the supply of water right now, which we have. And as in the morning session, professor told that there is 4,000 billion cubic meter of water, but that is actually the total water, clean water we have. But out of that, most of that is not accessible, or some of the water is in ice form. So that makes it 1/4, 1,000 cubic meters of water we have. So we need to change our approach right now to first have this supply of water in that this is the supply of water we have, and afterwards we should plan our demand accordingly. So this is the one thing. Another thing is, as India is an agriculture-based country, and most of our production, like the GDP also comes from agriculture. So most of these farmers are using groundwater for their for production of the crops, and some of the crops like rice, tobacco, sugarcane, all these crops, and cotton also, they are the major. India is the major exporter of some of these crops. So the countries exporting these crops are not actually exporting these crops; they are also exporting the water from India. So we should actually look into policies and gradually reduce the consumption in the country also, and the export of these crops, so that we can save some water future.
So I think now that we have a general idea of what each of you have worked on, do you have any comments or questions for each other, just briefly? Anything in particular? So then if not, I was curious, any of you can take this, whoever feels about, I mean, can think of an answer or from your experience. I was curious about, when you identify a problem, you think up a solution, and that solution may be simple, may be complex, may require multiple layers. What kind of opposition have you faced, or what kind of resistance have you faced, and where do you think that stems from? Because I think eventually these are problems, they're problems of human behavior, right? I mean, they're problems of what we want and what we do to get what we want, and eventually it's sort of about managing or altering, influencing human behavior. I think it's probably common to all the things that you've written about. So where do you think, when you have faced resistance, where has it come from? And how do you think we can overcome this resistance best to make a better world? Krishnadas, yeah.
So this is from my own experience in this project itself. So one basic problem which I found was the investment which is required in all these technologies which most of us have talked about. So the typical managerial attitude, especially in context of India, is a short-term profit. So they need to show numbers, whereas some of the technologies which we have talked about takes a long time to give you the return. So that is one basic problem. And the second problem which I faced was they haven't been hit so far. So I would just like to give an example. We flew into Bangalore by Kingfisher Airlines, and just hardly 10 or 15 seats were occupied. So I had a similar scenario 5 years back where I was traveling in Kingfisher, and it was the same thing, almost 15, 20 seats were occupied. But this time I noticed a difference. The air hostess, she was switching off the reading lights for all those places where passengers were not there. Because they have been hit, and it's time to respond, that they are responding to the changes. So before the changes hit us, all these projects, you would notice there is a common thing. They are all preventive measures. Water has not become extinct. Energy has not become completely gone. and computing resources, it's still there. So we have everything with us and we take that for granted. So that's a problem. The organizations have not been hit. So once they hit, even in from my own research in green IT, I have seen that post 2008, the number of papers which were discussing on green IT suddenly went up. So it was the recession time. I mean, companies were hit and they were trying to find out how efficiently you can utilize those resources.
Right, right. But
yeah.
So that's clear. When you feel the pinch, then of course you're motivated to act. But I think what you're also saying is that we have to act before that we reach that stage. And that's difficult, because that's not what people normally do. Maybe any of the others have an experience?
I can just add to that, again, in one of the previous discussions, it was mentioned the biggest inertia which people generally face in any kind of venture is to change the attitude, to change the behavior of people. So again, during our study, what we found was, since we were doing things in waste, when we went to people, they said that it's a waste, we would just throw it without thinking anything about it, whether some value could be derived out of it or not. So just as a small example, let's say if people buy a bottle of Coke, a plastic bottle of Coke, they would just throw the bottle here and there. So if I could just add a 2 rupee monetary value to it, that you go to a dustbin, you throw that bottle, I'll give you a 2 rupee note or something, people would immediately react to that. So that's what, the biggest inertia is, we have to change our own behavior to make things more sustainable. So that's my thought about it.
Just to add to that, it is difficult if people are aware about many things. People know what is morally right or wrong. It's a question of whether they want to do it or not. And there has to be a commercial basis for everything. So you have to entice people, either people or corporations. You just can't tell away, okay, do this, this is good for the environment. Nobody is going to do it. You have to give a critical, crucial, sustainable, profitable business plan. Okay, you do this, you are going to save this. Everybody will do it. So there is no point saying about protesting, okay, do this, do this. Nobody is going to listen. So in the waste management space, if we go and talk to companies, these SMEs, okay, do this, they will never listen. But if you say this, do this, and you are going to save this much on the bottom line, immediately the top management is going to take a decision. Our objective as a whole should be to bring out that aspect of it. I'm aware that Earth is degrading, so many things are happening around the world, fine. But you have to make a link between these two. Otherwise, there is no point talking about it.
Why?
Okay. One more thing which I would like to say is, whenever a good thing is happening to us, we go to say 5 people and tell us that this is a good thing happening to us. But whenever a bad thing is happening to us, we'll go to 20 people and say this is the bad thing that has happened to us. So actually, we should take this, that wasting energy, wasting water, or wasting any other resource is a bad thing. And we should go to 20 people and say that you are doing a bad thing. So this is a bottom-up approach we should apply, and each one of us right now, like from today, we should go to say other people and say this thing, that this is a bad thing. Government policies are there, but actually it takes time to reach people through single advertisements. And most of the policies, if you see from government, they're old. Even say water policy is 2002. After that, they haven't upgraded it. So it's a bottom-up approach. We need to take a step further and spread awareness about it.
So it's interesting that two people from 2 different IMs, but a slightly different outlook, I think, because let me just finish, because you focused on the monetary aspect, that there has to be a reward, there has to be a commercial reward for good behavior, and good, I mean good for the planet or good for the country and so on. So therefore, behavior is only going to come about if it's good for both the company or the individual and good for society as a whole. I think Mayank was, trying to articulate a slightly larger ideal that we get, this may or may not be possible, get people and perhaps even companies, I don't know if you meant companies, behave in ways that may not necessarily increase their profits, may not have a commercial gain, but are good for society. And that's an interesting, I know there's a debate about that. Maybe, does anybody, any of the others who have not spoken?
I would like to add one point to it.
Just shortly,
just to say that, rainwater harvesting project has been done in Bangalore. Yeah. And everybody knows how important that is. We have a water quota over here. You cannot draw more than that from the Kaveri River. In spite of everybody knowing it, nobody was installing the rainwater harvesting systems over here until a legislation was passed and people were told they will be penalized if they don't do it. So people's mind doesn't get motivated unless they are pulled or pushed. You do have to do something about it. Either penalize or motivate them to do something.
I'd like to give an example of LED lights here. So what happens? Supposedly you're in a home, CFL, it fails. You go to the shopkeeper and ask him what are the options I have. He shows you a bulb, he shows you a tube light, CFL, and an LED. What happens there is you outrightly reject LED lights. Reason being high cost here. So even though in a longer term, LED lights will pay you much faster, and it will have greater returns. But even then, out of sheer laziness or due to lack of funds or due to some other reason, you don't change. And I believe that laziness is also a big factor here. It could be changed by creating awareness and quantifying the impact for people of India. Unless they see the figures, they don't react.
Yeah,
that is one thing.
I think also there's this thing called discounting in economics. We discount the value of rewards that we'll get in the future. There's a nice experiment with human behavior. If you offer somebody $100 today, or you offer them $500 a year from now, and say you will get that $500, they will take the $100 today. I don't want the $500 a year because the human mind seems to be suspicious about rewards that may or may not appear in the future, and so we discount very strongly, much more strongly that might be rational. Anyway, Krishnadas, you had a point.
Just one thing, that this is not actually a debate of incentives versus individual attitude. I think it's the mix of both that will serve the purpose. As a business school, since most of us are from business schools, so our role lies in doing exact research for a particular project and finding out, giving them numbers that yes, this is what you will get when you implement this project. So this is our responsibility. At the same hand, we have our responsibility to change ourselves. So the individual attitude towards environment, as he suggested, is again our role. Providing numbers is again our role. So it's ultimately depending on us. We have to change things and we have to make our earth environmentally friendly.
Great. Okay, so that was very good. I think all these young people here have thought deeply both about the specific, the technical details about what they've written about, and they've also stepped back and thought more broadly about the issues involved and what are our ethical obligations, as well as this very thorny problem about how to get people to behave well, which is of course an age-old problem and has no one solution, I suppose. But in any case, please join me again in congratulating the winners, and all the best to them.